my name is Natani Hanley. I'm here with Nate Johnson and Noel Teller. This is going to be MCC's first Indigenous Issues podcast that's going to be in recognition for Native Heritage Month in November. So our issue for today is on the topic of economy on Indian country, and mostly it's just in regards to coming up maybe with a couple solutions and maybe brainstorming as to why the economy is as bad as it is on reservations. I would like to open up with a quote from Russell Means, one of the founders of American Indian Movement, in his address to Congress, and I believe it was it's around like the 1980s or late 1970s. But in his response to Congress, or his address to Congress, in regards to the corruption in the Sioux Nation, he talked about the differences between the Oglala Sioux Reservation and then also the differences on the Navajo Reservation. And he said that when you would go from the Oglala Sioux Nation, the poorest nation of all the indigenous nations, to the Navajo Nation, the richest of all the indigenous nations here in the United States, there is no difference. There's still poverty, there's still drug abuse, there's still homelessness. All these issues are very prevalent on the reservation, whether it be West Coast, East Coast, and definitely north and southern parts of the United States.
Have you seen that video?
Which one? Oh, the actual address.
When he was, when he saw Senator McCain.
Yep,
they're just like shook, but their faces on.
Yeah, dude,
their
were
faces,
shocked.
they're like, wow. But I like the one part that really stuck out with me, and that's always gonna stick with me, was when Russell Mean was talking about how the livestock reduction, they always found something to take from us, and we adapted.
Yeah.
And then they take back again, and then we adapted.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just, that's the one part that's always sticks with me, and it's true.
Yeah.
Definitely, and I think with the Navajo people, Sioux people, and just all indigenous people here in the United States, I just also really believe that, we are very resilient, especially coming through such horrors like boarding school, attempted genocide, structural genocide that takes place through policies today. But I think especially in this modern days of 2018, it requires all Native Americans to be resilient and as resilient as possible. So what were some of the reasons you guys have found that possibly that economies are doing so bad on reservation land?
I would say the main thing is like keeping money on the reservation. Like border towns, they make so much money off of us, and that's where they put like the liquor stores, the grocery stores. They always got a Walmart that natives had to go to. Like where I live, it's either you go to Gallup or you go to Farmington, and they're like 2 hours away, and we make that commute, and you have to buy 2 weeks worth of food until the next paycheck to go back there and spend your money again. So Farmington was smart. What they did was later on, like I want to say when I was 10 years old, they built another Walmart, a new one, and that one was nice too. But that one's right at the beginning of town. So, because it used to get crazy packed on weekends. Because some people started like not wanting to go to Gallup, because Gallup's kind of like broken down.
Wow. So actually, this is actually news to me, because when I was growing up in Winter Rock, that was our
place to go.
Place to go was the Gallup Walmart to go get all of our food and stuff. And now you're saying that it's all migrating to Farmington now.
But it's still crazy packed in Gallup when you go on weekends. But Farmington is smart. They're making so much money off the Navajos to where they have 2 Walmarts, they have a Sam's Club, and Farmington is booming.
Yeah,
they're starting to grow,
dude,
and they're starting to go into Aztec now. And it's just like they always say, we want to they preach at the chapter meetings that we want to keep the money on the reservations.
Yeah.
But it's like, I don't see why can't we have a Walmart instead of a Bash's and stuff like that? But I know that goes further back, and there's more like loopholes to that. So, but that's one of the things I saw growing up firsthand, was like they did always preach like, why can't we go get groceries at Chin Lee, but we could go get it cheaper at Sam's Club, and we could pay the price of like 1 gallon of milk, but we could get the same price in Sam's Club in Farmington for 2 gallons.
Yeah.
So I don't know. That's one thing. You got one?
So the question was, what are the things that we see now with the economic?
Yeah.
Yeah, basically, like maybe what are some issues that you thought of or possibly found in your research in regards to maybe why are we doing so bad economically speaking on reservation lands?
I think I kind of found is it's kind of like embedded in the law of how things function between, being a sovereign nation and then also like with having like kind of like being like a separate entity, but you can't completely like you don't have full self-governance because you have
Yeah.
to kind of like run through things, and like you said with the loopholes, and that's probably a big thing, but it's really hard to kind of like divulge into the exact law of everything and like getting businesses here or either just like getting things like just like around money.
Yeah, like just trying to actually get people interested in coming onto the reservation, I'm guessing.
Yeah, so stuff like that. Pretty much, it's just kind of like the law part and like how that we function and how like we are able to kind of like go about things.
Uh-huh.
And so that kind of is like tied into money and like policy.
I think it's really cool that you actually brought that up too, right after what Nate was talking about, because Nate was just asking as to why can't we
Build stuff.
why can't we build stuff or have businesses here on the reservation? And my background, I've done a little bit of research into figuring out how to jumpstart economies on reservation land, and one of the issues is what you're talking about is the litigation portions of it. Where is our sovereignty? Are we sovereign? Are we not sovereign? And this fuzziness and this clearness that is brought about in this litigation is what's stopping these entities from coming onto reservation land. More specifically speaking, I can't name the exact law it is, but yeah, it's one of our laws that basically gives us our right to sovereignty. And with our sovereignty, as you guys know, it's defined as having complete rule over our own, what do they call that? Our own...
Self-governance?
Yeah, it's like self-governance. We have our own self-governance, and we can take care of our own issues and address them by ourselves without any outside help. And so what that all means from a legal standpoint is we're foreign nations inside of another nation.
Yeah.
And because technically we are foreign nations, these investors and entrepreneurs, the people that we need to come onto reservation lands to generate our economy,
They're hesitant.
they're hesitant, and they're very they're kind of scared
Because they don't. Yeah, I know.
because there's a lot of money that goes into investing into creating structures, and then not only just creating the structure itself, but actually implementing the business inside the structure as well. And so because of how much effort that goes into this, effort when involving business equates to monetary value. How much money did this cost?
Mm-hmm.
So what ends up happening is like thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars go into these businesses, and from a legal standpoint, these businesses can just up and leave like that, and the people that invested into these businesses will then be kind of just SOL. And so that's another reason why a lot of businesses are very worried about coming onto reservation land, investing in reservation land. And then also on top of that, we're talking about a very complex issue here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
really
this also
complex.
gets into land too, because as I was telling Noel earlier, that with economy, the idea of economy based around the idea of what can we do to put money into the people's hands? How can we get money flowing through the reservation? And one of the ways that I know tribes are trying to combat that right now, I think it's the Gila River tribe as an example. They are allowing personal leasing off from individual American Indians that own land here in Arizona. Basically what that means is they can then contract out their land to
Like rent?
businesses. Yeah, they can rent out their land to businesses, so that way they can create like these giant billboards. You know,
Smart.
when you're going down the 60 or whatever, you see those giant billboards off to the left and the right.
Or the 101.
Yeah,
Going
it's-
toward that reservation.
Yeah, and Eddie kind of went over this a little bit, but they're leasing these out, and they're not even having to pay any cost whatsoever to actually erect these structures themselves. This is all the businesses. They erect their
They do it
structure.
themselves.
Yeah, they put in the advertisements, and all that natives have to really do is just subcontract their land out, and then they get monthly
Sign
payments.
a paper and get monthly payment. That's
Pretty
smart.
much.
That's kind of what my cousins are half Hickory. They kind of gave me a little scoop because like they do something like that.
Uh-huh.
So if I'm not mistaken, he said his grandpa leases out his land
Yeah.
for oil because they have oil out there in northeast New Mexico.
Uh-huh.
So when you're going to the Dulce Reservation, you see a bunch of oil mines, and those are potential little lands that they're leasing to the oil companies, and they're getting paid money.
Yeah. And then another thing I do notice, though, with leasing out your land, and one of the big issues with this is when you lease out your lands, you're actually giving up your right to land tenure. I don't know if you guys know what that means. So a land tenure it's basically saying that, once you pass away, this is the order of which the land is going to be passed down through. And if it can't be passed down this way, it has to go through a separate direction. So basically, American Indians are able to sublease or subcontract out their land. But in regards to that, they're also sacrificing the order in which their land will be passed down. They will end up giving up those rights to land tenure.
I see what you're saying. So if they already had a plan saying like this land's gonna go to my son if I die.
When signing that contract, you might be signing something that says it's instead going to the corporation.
Yeah. But you don't see that because most natives are not going to pay a
they want the
lawyer to
money.
look at it. You know what I mean?
And so I think it's actually very interesting that we're talking about this because we have two issues here, or not two issues. We have two things that are part of the same issue as solutions. And so on one end, you have Native Americans getting money in their hands, at like what we want to jumpstart the economy. But then on the other end of the spectrum, like what you're talking about, we're not able to keep this money within the reservation.
Because it's not it won't be technically reservation once they're leasing it, right?
Yeah.
Well, wouldn't that be kind of tricky if we implemented that kind of system to the Navajo Nation? Because I know with the Navajo Nation, like the central part is a section that the government can never take back. The other sections that they added on later, they can take back. So would that be kind of tricky if like we were saying, like, I want to throw out there like Indian Wells, because I know that's in part of the area that's not in the certain boundary that the government can't take back. Will you still be able to do something like that?
So that ties up in something, as you guys are probably aware of, called trusts. So this all ties back into the Reorganization Act, the IRA, and how basically the land that was agreed upon through treaties and through other means is technically no longer ours or the government's. Hold on, let me rephrase that. Technically, it's no longer ours, and it is the government's. But at the same time, technically, it is ours because it's promised to us. It's in trust. We trust them to keep this land for us. So if it was one of those pieces of land, because there are two different types of land. There's those trust lands, and then there's another name for it. I found when I was doing my research. But yeah, there's another type of land specifically, and that might be what you're talking about in regards to whether or not land tenure involves into it or not. Because obviously I'm an undergrad student. Our knowledge is so limited. But I think right there, those two issues right there can slowly start bringing up a solution. Because obviously it sounds like we are slowly starting to find ways to get money on the reservation. But the next issue to tackle would be, how do we keep money in the reservation? I know that some of the solutions I found were mostly in regards to creating institutions for American Indians, like creating our own institutions here. So an institution is basically like you guys know what institutions are? Okay, I just want to make sure. I don't want to make sure I'm not just like blindly saying this, but yeah. So I want to create, or I should more so say, we should create institutions as a solution to these troubled economies that we are having. Basically, as I was telling Noel here earlier, that one of these institutions should be focused around law, because I think that's the modern day battlefield. Yeah, because in regard, like, our ancestors have fought on our land through different wars. They've had to fight off several different types of invaders, whether it be Spanish, English,
But not only like
French. Yeah.
not only physically, but we have to fight in law.
But that's
and
what
that's why we need to keep going.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying is like it's no longer now where we are up in arms
Yeah.
with each other. It's the
Legally.
battlefield is now in courts of law, and so I think that's one of the institutions we should create.
See, they could have done something with that money that we got, that 553 million that we
Mhm.
got from the state of New York. See, I don't know what they're doing with that money. I don't know if they're talking about what they're going to do with that money, but we should be figuring out. I know they were saying that they want to save it for education. So I don't know if that regards to like the Chief Manuelito or the ONSPA is going to go up, but they should invest in that money, build our own infrastructures. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And employ our own people, because Window Rock from the last, I bet it's changed so much from the last time you've been there. They're getting a new hospital, and like I just told you, they got that multi-purpose facility.
Yeah, it sounds like it's definitely coming up a lot more than what I was growing up around.
But have you heard of Kayenta, right?
Yeah, I know Kayenta.
So Kayenta has something. I think they're the only one on the reservation. They have a township.
Mm-hmm.
So I think they tax some of their community a certain percentage, and that's how they build their infrastructure. That's how they opened up their skate park.
Mm-hmm.
And Kayenta's growing. They got infrastructure there. They have multiple fast food joints, and it's just like not all the town. Like Chinle only has Burger King now, and that's just like, goddamn, I don't want Burger King.
For real, bro. Dude, I totally understand that. But yeah, I think in maybe another institution, it's really funny that you bring up like fast food.
Yeah. But that's moneymaker on the reservation.
It's a moneymaker.
I hate to say it. Yeah,
it
is,
dude.
Makes money.
It really is. But in regards to that, I think another institution that should be emphasized on is either a form of horticulture, agriculture. I know that the Navajo Nation currently has programs to teach their people how to hydroponically grow their food. But it's more so of a workshop. So it's if you guys want to come in, learn about it, that's cool. To. Yeah, exactly. If you want to.
It's not like you have to be there.
Yeah, and
if you want to, not a lot of people want to, so they don't get a good turnout. I know what you're saying.
Yeah, and I think it'd be really important to just like revolve an institution completely around that, because I think if they create an institution that would give the Navajo people, or just not even just Navajo people, but indigenous people in general, because this could work for any indigenous nation and here in the U.S. But I think if they went towards hydroponic growing and possibly, and more probably, towards aquaponic growing, and give the tools and knowledge of how to do all this to the indigenous people, they can then take that knowledge and then create businesses off of it. And then we have so much reservation land that's just dirt, dry dirt. There's no nutrients in it. There's literally no reason to grow, or no possible way to grow on this land.
It's overgrazed.
Yeah, but with hydroponic or aquaponic growing, we don't need the land. We turn unusable land into usable land. And at that point, if we start focusing more on it, get more grants, more funding, all that stuff, then it can evolve more towards creating jobs. And then once it becomes more of a demand and it gets recognized, I feel like then more indigenous nations could capitalize upon it. And the next thing you know, instead of the U.S. getting their food or their vegetables or produce from Mexico, overseas from somewhere, they could just get it all locally grown here from one of the reservations.
I'm sorry, Noel. I like that, but then again, it comes down to, I like how you said we have a big old land that we could make to use, but then again, it comes back to the people. They'll be like, I'm sorry, Navajo people, but we're stubborn. They're going to be like, no, this is my land. I don't want this on it. So this is my grandma's land. No, I don't want this here.
And I totally get that. But again, devil's advocate here. I feel like if you were to come to these people and teach them, I'm not saying, right here, let me come onto your land and build this infrastructure, this greenhouse, whatever. No, it's saying, here's this information. Here's the tools you're going to need. you guys grow food anyway. You guys have always been farmers. So why don't you just do what your people have been doing on your own land in a modern day way? And then not only that, but then obviously we'd have more produce in reservation land. No longer you're going to have to go bashes to get some week-old produce. You can get it from right in your backyard. You can sell it to your other community members. True. You can, there's a lot of things you can do with that. It just opens up a lot of doors, and I think it would be really cool. But I completely understand what you're saying, and there's a lot of holes within the idea that I still haven't kind of flattened out yet. But I think that the Navajo people are going to be more than accepting in regards to hydroponic growing, because when I say hydroponic growing, there's always this stigma around hydroponic growing. People always think it's in terms of marijuana or something, but I'm not talking about marijuana. I'm talking about lettuce. I'm talking about carrots,
I'm glad you
tomatoes.
That.
You know,
people are gonna be like, what?
Yeah, I'm talking about actual legitimized agricultural produce. And on top of that, we will also be giving all your nutritional needs that your body demands. But on top of that, the cool thing about aquaponics is not only do we give you all your food groups and your nutrients that you'll need, you also get access, well, I should say almost all you need. You don't have access to proteins unless you obviously grow specific types of
legumes.
Yeah, like legumes and other vegetables and stuff like that have your proteins in them. But the cool thing about aquaponics is instead of getting your proteins from non-animal based ways, I should say, you can then get it from the fish, because an aquaponic system is basically an entire ecosystem. You're just bringing all the pieces together. You're giving it water, you're giving it nutrients, you're giving it everything it needs to survive, so that way it goes full circle. So the difference between hydroponic and aquaponic growing is what's in the water, because what's in the water is technically, there's usually two different types of fish, and I think I forgot, there's one like superfish that we genetically made. It's called you were just talking about too, it's not flounder, it's
salmon.
It's
I was like, I had salmon for lunch today.
It's not salmon. It's called something else. I can't think of the name of it. It's such
Trout.
No, it's not trout. It's like
brat.
Yeah, tilapia. That's what it is. It's tilapia. And so that's one of the fishes you can get in there that help produce the nutrients that are needed to feed the plant. So it's like full circle. The fish are eating from the plants. The fish then poop. The poop
and then give us
feeds.
fertilizer.
Yeah, the poop then feeds the plants, and the plants feed us.
Yeah.
You know what's really cool though, because like I remember like reading about that in like some article where they like were talking about aquaponics, and like I think they actually got the idea from like South America, and how that like
Chinampas or something.
Yeah, and they're like an indigenous tribe or indigenous community, and it's like we kind of like bring that back into like our culture of like actually practicing things that were around like long years ago, and it's actually like sustainable.
Yeah. Most definitely. I think that's another one of these institutions we need to focus on is sustainability. I know that the NGS just recently, not so recently, it's not that recent anymore, but the NGS shut down. And as far as I know, I think the Navajo Nation are still trying to figure out whether or not they want to continue going with the coal route, or if they maybe might be thinking this is the time to maybe make that switch over to maybe solar or some other form of energy. Yeah. And I think it's, again, I agree with you with that. It should be something we need to consider and get away from coal. I think the quicker we get Peabody Coal and any other coal company.
Or a coal mine or mines.
Yeah, just mines in general out of Navajo Nation, the better. And honestly, not even just the Navajo Nation, but all indigenous nations, all 576 of them. Anything interesting to note from you guys' research at all?
When I was like kind of researching, I kind of like mostly kind of like found articles just kind of like focusing on like the history and stuff. I didn't really find anything about like aquaponics or anything or like new day stuff, but it's just mainly like, oh, this is what happened in the past. And I didn't get to the part where they like come with like a bunch of solutions or like things to address it or like how to even get away from it. So I just mainly kind of like understand the history and like more of like the boring parts of it. Not boring. I'm not saying boring. Like this isn't like I'm not saying this is boring at all. I'm just saying like it's like, you know, there's big words and fillers for these like articles and stuff,
Yeah.
and sometimes it's like hard to read through, and so that's the only main part that I really kind of like got into with like reading about, you know, Native American economies and such.
Yeah,
I-
you usually when you look it up, you just get like she said, the history of it. But then mine was like, I grew up
Hearing about it.
Yeah, I grew up hearing about it. I grew up seeing about it. So all the stuff I'm talking about right now are through like what I saw,
Yeah.
my experience, and what I've heard and what I've seen people talk about, people's what they want to see change, like at chapter house
Yeah.
meetings and stuff like that. Which is one thing like the younger generation needs to start going to, is like chapter house meeting, because when we get older, that's going to be our community, and we get a say on what's going to go on our reservations and stuff like that, or in our little community.
Yeah.
So like you guys were talking about, we're talking about how to bring money and keep it. So like there's this problem that I'm trying to like get seen on our reservation, technically our whole reservation, but mainly like in Round Rock. But we have a really bad trash dumping problem. And so I was talking to the chapter house, and there's a lady named Mary John there who was saying that she's trying to get all the other communities like Lucajigay, Mini Farms, Rock Point, Rough Rock to all think about this problem and target trash and infecting our environment. And so what they were trying to do is like get a transfer station in the middle of everybody. So we have Rough Rock, Mini Farms, Rock Point, Round Rock, Lucajigay, and we're trying to get a middle part, which would be Mini Farms, and they have the best area and land for it because it's flat right there.
Mm-hmm.
And they're trying to get a transfer station so they can go to all the communities, pick up their trash, and then go dump it at the transfer station, which will obviously make jobs. Then we need drivers, and we need people who's going to sort the trash,
Yeah.
like what they're doing here at the Salt River Pima Reservation. And not only did the Salt River Pima Reservation, I was watching their video on how they done it. They had an old landfill, and you guys know when you make landfill, you create that gas. And that's why when you go by Salt River, they're always burning it.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
gas created from the landfill.
The methane.
Yeah, methane. That's what it is. And so they had an old one that they covered, and it's all covered with sand, and it was building up
Yeah.
methane. And so they stuck drills in there, and now that methane created energy. So they're giving energy to
Wow.
Gilbert. They're not even giving the energy to their tribe. They're giving it to Gilbert, Tempe, and Mesa.
I think that's one thing I always find is like, even with NGS, and there's
Mhm.
another one that was like in Utah, the generating stations that
Yeah.
either use like what is it called? It's not. It's like natural resource, but the ones that like are kind of like limited. They only have so many.
Oh,
There's a specific word for it.
There's natural resources, and then there's non-renewable.
Oh yeah, because so like non-renewable resources, and like how a lot of it doesn't even support the Navajo Nation. It just was shipped off to California, and then when California, like they have this huge solar farm on the way to there, like in between Arizona and going to say San Diego. There's a huge like, just like, I don't know, it's like just huge like of like solar panels, and then they pulled out from the NGS and the other one that's in Utah for the generating stations. And it's like a lot of our stuff kind of like gets like exported out. So like a lot of our resources or like things that the ideas that we do have that would help our communities and where we come from, they get like exploited for other people.
Yeah.
But I think that's because like that's who's willing to pay for it.
Yeah. Another thing is like, I'm just throwing out ideas. This is like stuff that we could make money off of. I'm not saying that it's in
Institutions.
proposal, yes. So like another idea is like, we get a lot of wind up there during the spring, and I hate the springtime because it's windy, especially being in Round Rock,
Yeah.
Chinle area. It's just like a flat land, and it's like, why can't we have wind turbines? Like you go 3 hours south of where we live, you have Sholo, or in between Sholo and Holbrook, they have those wind turbines right there. And if that's a perfect place to put that there, but I don't think any of that energy goes to either Holbrook or Snowflake, those surrounding towns. Like they, Holbrook, just outside Holbrook and to Joseph City, they have that APS APS mine right there, and none of that energy goes to the town. It all goes to California. But what I'm saying is we should build our own, invest our own money from our tribe and put solar, wind turbines there to help generate energy all across the Navajo Nation, which would target like people not having energy, who live like 4 or 5 miles off the road. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think it would have to actually kind of be like more the thing of like being kind of like in your own backyard kind of thing, if we were to like provide that for everybody, because like one of the biggest like the you know, like with water, some people don't have water there, and it's so expensive to actually like get the drill in and like actually install it, so like
all the way out there.
Yeah, so the infrastructure isn't there because people live out in like in the boonies, or like they just live like, you know, 3 miles out of town, and it's only 3 other people around them. And so it just probably had to be like a backyard thing and be like funded by the Navajo government to go ahead and make everything much more sustainable.
Yeah, I think one of the main keys to solving these the economical issues on reservation land honestly lies in making the people money, putting money into every person's hand on the reservation. So as we went over a little bit, some of the tribes are allowing some of these natives to self-lease their land. If we can somehow sell the land or maybe utilize the land in some way that's easy and accessible to everyone.
And that's not hurting the land.
Yes, exactly. Something that's sustainable. And I think those are the answers that we are looking for right now in Indian country. And
wasn't there a thing though that like Eddie had said, it's just like with the legality of everything, sometimes we can't actually do that, or like we can't like make a profit off of it or something? I don't know, like not like a profit, but like it's just like things like can't be done.
Like you're just making the money back and then just going back to that. Like that's what he was saying last time.
Yeah.
You're not really making a profit. Which brings me back to like, I'm glad you said that. It brought me back to like casinos. We're not in like an area where like big cities, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So we have gaming now, which is supposedly supposed to boost our economy and keep money flowing.
Which it does to an extent. Yeah.
But we break even with all the. I was reading an article where we break even with the electricity, paying out, like paying the workers and stuff like that. So
and
it's
that
just
probably
like,
doesn't even remotely contain like what is the ecological damage of the casino.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't see casinos really working for us unless we're like out here. These reservations are smart because we're in a bigger city.
Mm-hmm.
More people are going to gamble. But the way where we're putting the casinos are in like areas that don't have too many people, and Navajos are going in there more than tourists.
Yeah.
So it's like
it's donations.
We're just donating to ourselves.
Like for real. I think one last let's see, how much time do we have here? Yeah, one last thing I would like to touch up on real quick. Kind of goes back into the institutions a little bit, but I think, again, one of the institutions we should really be focusing on is our education. Excuse me. Is the education of our fellow American Indians. I think because of the economical standpoint of reservation land, they can't provide as good of an education as schools that are off the reservation, which then leads to migrations of Native students going off the reservation to pursue a better education, so that way they can come back and help their people. Most times in that whole process, they end up getting martyred. They end up having to die for their cause, basically. And I honestly don't think that's right from a personal standpoint, and then from an indigenous standpoint, I think that is wrong. But I think a lot of it honestly has to do with the economy. Like it all ties back in with the money. How is it being spread around? How are we getting it? How is it coming in? How is it going out of the reservation land? And I don't think enough time, effort, and thought are put into the educational systems that need to produce intellectual Native Americans that have to be able to have the patience, the knowledge, because I know we as Native Americans have the capability for all this knowledge and be able to utilize it. It's just we don't have that access, and mostly it's
Or
in regard.
limited.
Yeah, it's mostly in regards to money. We don't have the money for it. We can't afford good teachers. We can't make the teachers stay. It's just super backwards and contorted, and especially in a time right now where we're talking about the new age battlegrounds is no longer outside in the field somewhere. It's now within the walls of a courthouse. We need American Indians that are smart and capable of defending ourselves in the court of law. And unfortunately, tribal law is a lot more intensive, complex, and much more of a headache than any other form of law. And that's a big turnaway. It's a super big turnaway for a lot of students, especially when they look at how much a tribal lawyer is making. It's sad. It's super sad. Some people can make more doing a minimum wage job at a fast food place somewhere,
Just like the Navajo Nation presidents.
It's like $55,000, and then they get a house for 2 years. Okay, bro.
And I don't know what the stipend is, but I'm sure it ain't much either.
Yeah, and so I just think it's insane right now, and I know you guys are looking into getting into the medical field, and I think that's great, especially with some of the issues we're having with health, depression, obesity, just all those different types of illnesses we have in regards to the trauma and attempted genocide we have faced in our history. All those are very important. I just don't see as many Native Americans going into the tribal law program as I do health programs. And for me, as a tribal lawyer, that kind of scares me a little bit. Because I'm seeing more people, and it also could just be the fact of our campus, where we're at, maybe on the East Coast somewhere, they have more tribal lawyers, or you know what I mean? Yeah. But even then, Arizona has some of the best law programs for tribal law, so that kind of even doesn't make sense. But anyway, my whole point of this, though, is just that I'm not seeing a lot of support for
education,
for education, but I don't see a lot of support for the law aspect in our communities. I don't see a lot of kids saying, "Oh, I want to grow up and be a tribal lawyer," even though that's like one of the in my opinion, one of the most dire jobs we need filled right now, because as the days go on, we're losing our sovereignty through different judges. We just recently had our ICWA challenged by a Texas Supreme Court judge somewhere. Oh, yeah. It's crazy, dude. Our sovereignty is being infringed everywhere we look, pretty much. So, and like I said, I personally don't see enough support in the law department, and in my opinion, that all ties into education. A lot of our students end up on the reservation, leave high school not being prepared for ASU, for GCU,
or even just a community college. The workload is a lot more.
It is, and so because of that, I think we're just really lacking. And not just the law department too. I think it's all departments, teachers, lawyers. I honestly don't think we're short of any health specialists or nurses, but I know we're definitely short of.
Well, I guess we're not short when it comes to like health, or I guess you could say teachers too. We kind of are short, but at the same time, are we getting good teachers and good doctors? Because they see that they can work on any Native American reservation, and if they work a certain amount of years, their student loans are garnished.
Yep.
And so that's the first thing they look for, like, oh, my student loan is going to be garnished, but are they the top doctors?
Or do they even care about American Indians?
And that's why all the teachers, once they're, I think it's like 2 years, and then they're gone. Once they get their student loans are gone, boom, they're gone too. And they're going to a place that pays better money where they actually care.
Wait, are you saying like loan forgiveness? So like their loans get paid off?
If you work on any Native American reservation for at least 2 years, their student loans get garnished.
Yeah.
I think also too is I recently saw a statistic talking about how most Native Americans on reservation versus off reservation tend to come from more broken homes. And I think that also plays into a lot of what we're seeing involving in the economy too, because that ties in with their schooling, their everyday life. Just because, like, I personally have grown up in a single-parent household, and I've witnessed and met other people who've actually grown up in two-person households. And there's a striking difference
It's
between
big difference.
there's a striking difference between me and the person that grew up with two parents, and then same thing vice versa. And I think anyone else that lived with both families could tell me it's a lot different than just having your mom or just your dad taking care of you. But because of that missing person, psychologically speaking, there's definitely going to be some issues with our children, how they process things, how they handle things. Not saying it's for the worst, by no means, because I turned out pretty okay. but seriously though, I just think that
plays in
plays a
effect,
big it plays a
what
big part in the
decisions you're
economy.
gonna do. Yeah.
Can I bring up a point?
Yeah.
So you know how like there's like reparations.
Yeah.
I don't know if the Navajo Nation has ever had like reparations, but there is like a prominent sign of intergenerational trauma within the Navajo Nation.
Well, even then, it's not just the Navajo Nation. There's been a study that shows that intergenerational trauma is literally embedded in our DNA as Native Americans. No other ethnicity can say that. From all the things we've been through, that we've already gone over through this podcast, it's literally embedded in our DNA. There's no way out of it. There's nothing to help it. Someone can literally pull up my amino acid strands and be like, okay, this is different than his black friend or his Mexican friend or his Chinese friend.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's insane, but it does tie into what you're talking about. But it's not just Navajos. It's American Indians in general.
Yeah. So like I'm not sure if there ever has been like a class action lawsuit or something to go ahead and like go back through and get reparations to go ahead and put back into, say, the economy to make sure that we have more jobs or that we have the agricultural means or that we have
the proper institutions we need.
Exactly. And if like that were to happen, that could be a possible solution. But honestly, that would take like probably like 30 years or something.
Well, even then, I do know, however, that I believe it was during the Obama presidency. It was December 7th, 2011, I think it was. The White House released a statement talking. Basically, it was a statement acknowledging what the White House, or not even the White House, what the entire United States has done to American Indians. We're acknowledging what we've done to Indians. We're sorry for what has happened to Indians. But with the way it was all written in legalese, that at the end of it, because of how they wrote it, it basically says, we're sorry, we acknowledge, but we didn't do it. And so because of the way it was written, any indigenous nation can't take them to court for what they have said. So yes, they acknowledge they've completely screwed us up. They've cut our ties to our culture. They've admitted to all of it. You can even look it up on the internet and read the whole thing. It's insane, but they literally admit to all of it. But we can't sue them.
Bruh.
So in other words, we can't get reparations because technically they did it, but they didn't.
That's really weird though, because like there is like even like it's not even just inside the treaties, but it's probably also part of like, oh yeah, like they signed this treaty and it's like you can't like go ahead and go back and like, you know.
Well, even then, like there's not a single treaty that has been followed through with today, and that's a fact. That's actually factual information at this point, that not a single Native American treaty between the U.S. and indigenous nations here has been fulfilled. Not a single one. They have all been broken at this point.
But I think also, like, I think that whenever, like, you know, chiefs or leaders had signed them, I think, like, in them there's always, like, some type of loophole that, like, was, like, always. You know, we can't go ahead and uphold this by the United States government, but it offers, you know, we'll go ahead and, like, let you go back home.
Yeah.
And so, dang.
Plus, they didn't have that much knowledge. They were just signing, I want my people to not struggle anymore. I want to go home.
I mean, especially when we were walked all the way to Bosque Redondo, and we're there for, I forget how long we were there.
5 years.
Yeah, we were there for 5 years.
That's
and then finally they gave us an opportunity to go back home. I mean,
but we had to go to school.
Yeah, and I honestly don't blame them for signing it quickly, because
why wouldn't you want to go home?
Exactly.
Yeah, but that one was, I think that was actually like it was like a fairly well-written treaty by Barbancito to go ahead and have us to return home. It's just like there's nothing, you know, from henceforth, you know, like from here on, you know, that was pretty good, but yeah.
But no, I see what you're saying, and I just don't think
Oh, I was like saying like I'm giving props. Like it was a fair. I think it was like fairly well written. Like to go ahead and like you got to
Oh,
like,
yeah.
It I think it was fairly like well written, and for like somebody like coming from our background, at that time without having like none of us went to law school at that time, and they have other people who like have this like very complex language to, and but we're still able to like return home.
Yeah, most definitely. And I mean, even regardless, I don't think that Barboncito, Manuelito, or anybody could have foreseen the horrors of boarding school and what it did to us and how it really turned us out. But yeah, I as well think the Treaty of 1858 was really a strong piece of legislature that we still abide by today in the Navajo Nation. But I think, let's see what else we have on the agenda. I think that'll pretty much wrap it up for this session. It was really good talking to you guys. I like to hear all of what you said, and I think we definitely hit up on a lot of really good points in regards to the economy. And and I think that wraps it up for this session of Indigenous Issues for recognition of Native Heritage Month here at MCC. I'm Natani Hanley.
I'm Nathan Johnson.
Noel Taller.
And thank you so much, guys. I appreciate it. Have a good night.